What is up, fight fans, and welcome to episode 3 of Sportsnaut Scrap Report. I am Jason Burgos, of course, your co-host with the absolute damn mostest. And of course, I am joined by my guy, the very militant, the very loyal, the very busy excuse-making, Anthony Walker, Senior AW. How are you doing today, especially after those prelims from last Saturday?
Well, I'm doing fantastic after those prelims on Saturday because I didn't watch them. I was actually having some trouble with the Wi-Fi in the Airbnb that I'm staying at because I am recording today from an undisclosed location. So I didn't see the prelims except for the featured prelim, which we've discussed off camera, and I'm done with talking about it with you, Jason. I would ask how you're doing, but I don't care.
For those of you that may have missed it last week, and of course, if you're watching it, if you like it, please like, share, subscribe, comment, everything. But Anthony's he seemed to be a very big Kevin Lee fan and was very excuse making. All these ideas. Kevin Lee's really good. He this happened to him. This happened. And then we saw what happened on Saturday, and reality set in once again for you.
Hey man, the guy blew his knee a couple years ago. Probably he came out with double knee sleeves. His body is betraying him at this point. It happens to every fighter. At some point in their career, we hit that point with Kevin Lee. He's still the man. So let's not do this, Jason. Let's not do it.
Doesn't it? I mean, I'm sorry for Kevin Lee, but doesn't it almost kind of make you feel good in a way that at our age, a 29-year-old's body has lost itself and left him behind, and it makes me feel kind of better about myself a little bit.
But the thing is, a depleted version of Kevin Lee is still physically superior to us. So
what?
I mean, I'm trying to look like that at a weigh-in, you know.
No. Fair enough. All right, we've got a lot of things to talk about. Of course, we're going to talk some UFC 290 coverage, which is have to. It's a big pay-per-view, a lot of good fights. But first, there was a couple of interesting news nuggets in terms of what I think it's fair to call them legends leaving the sport. And one of them will be doing it at UFC 290. We'll talk about him in a minute. But the first is something we covered on Sportsnaut was Alistair Overeem. He officially retired from the sport, kind of in a weird, unorthodox way, just out of left field kind of thing. And part of it was he went through a major physical change. He changed his diet. The guy we all know, horse meat fan, all that kind of stuff. He's a vegetarian now. Probably looks like he lost maybe 100 pounds, maybe or so, and big difference. If you go to the article on Sportsnet, you can see a picture of him, how different he looks now. But how will we remember Alistair, the Demolition Man, over him? Is he a top 5 heavyweight? Is he a top 10 heavyweight? He finishes with a 47-19 record. I'll run down some of his biggest wins. He beat Brock Lesnar, beat Vitor Belfort twice. For those of you who didn't know, he was a light heavyweight for a lot of the early part of his career. Sergey Kharitonov, Mark Hunt twice, Verdum twice, one of the great heavyweights of all time. He got wins over Mir and Dos Santos, former champions. He lost it to Chuck Liddell, got a couple losses to Lil Nog, Shogun twice, Bigfoot. He's got some tough losses like the Travis Brown. That was a tough one. Ben Rothwell lost Miocic. Ngannou. No, nothing wrong with that. Ngannou was the infamous like Pez dispenser head moment that will never be forgotten. Where do you place him? What are your lasting thoughts on Overeem? Is he top 5? Is he top 10 all time heavyweight?
He's at least top 10. I think his resume at heavyweight is one of the ones that you can't really poke too many holes at. Like, he took on pretty much everyone that was presented in front of him that he was allowed to. It's unfortunate that he didn't get the big title fight that he was supposed to have. I want to say it was UFC 146, I think, that was built around all heavyweights on the main card. And he originally was supposed to fight, I believe, Junior Dos Santos for the title.
Was Miocic not a title fight? I thought that was a title fight.
Miocic was a title fight, but that was, but that at that point that would have been the perfect time for him to capitalize on what he had built thus far, because his prior win was against Brock Lesnar, and he was coming off of the Strikeforce and Dream Heavyweight Championships and K1 and whatnot. So that would have been the perfect time. It's unfortunate that he couldn't capitalize on that for obvious testosterone related reasons. Alistair Overeem's got a weird legacy because he was definitely one of this more significant action fighters at heavyweight. You didn't find too many fights of him where it wasn't fun to watch. Like he was lamping somebody or getting lamped himself. Typically, he was in a lot of firefights. He put together some good moments. Then there's the muddled history of his physique and how that evolved
Yep.
due to artificial substances, and it's a lot of things to unpack with Alistair Overeem, but he was at the very least a fan friendly fighter, and also a guy who, much like Andrei Arlovsky, was able to reinvent himself after a string of brutal knockouts where we kind of thought this was going to be the end for him, and he was able to sort of revive his career and continue to be relevant up until when he retired.
Yeah, for me, a lot of you nailed it for me. A great striker. He was a K1 level striker. But yeah, his physique and the questions about it in an era really before USADA and stuff like that. It's going to be one of the major narratives of his career. He tested positive for testosterone in his last fight. He got a win over Badahari, big win in their trilogy fight. Tested positive for performance enhancers. The horse meat thing. Super talented guy. I think the lasting memories. I agree. I think he's top 10 probably for sure. But striking skills, questions about his body, and his chin. That was the biggest thing. He was a guy who was a light heavyweight early, was probably cutting too much to make that division. Made it to heavyweight, was a good fighter, but it's like he always still had like a light heavyweight's chin. And heavyweight is such a, it doesn't get enough credit for how it can just change for any fighter, even as good as they are, just because everybody hits hard. And that was always like his biggest Achilles heel. If he had like a Miocic chin, which you have, I think he would have been a legend. He probably would have been a top 3 all time, but that was his one big weakness, and that's a tough thing to have for a striker. Speaking of a striker, another great striker is going to retire after his fight at UFC 290, and that's Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler is another one. And it's the same questions for Overeem. His legacy is fascinating because of his history as being a middleweight, kind of making the decision to when he finally had this one last chance at the UFC, goes down to welterweight, flourishes. He's one of those classic great stories of an MMA fighter, has this weird career, starting to kind of falls into this journeyman kind of spot because maybe he's in the wrong camp, wrong weight, finds his right space, becomes a middleweight, shoots right back at the title. Dos Anjos did that. Charles Oliveira did that. That's what makes MMA so great compared to boxing. But looking back, he fights Nico Price on Saturday. Is he a top 10 welterweight of all time? He ended 29 record with 29-16 going into his last fight. Biggest wins, Nick Diaz. The Melvin Manhoff fight was a great fight just because of the kicks, and he was dealing with the kicks, and he comes with this bomb and knocks him out. Big Josh Koscheck. This is what I'm loving about looking up this stuff. Fans like us and people that cover the sport for so long, we get to say names like Josh Koscheck and Rory McDonald, and these young bucks don't even know how great these fighters were. Johnny Hendricks, he beat Rory twice. Carlos Condit got a win over Cerrone, but he lost to Nick, lost to Shields, lost to Jacare, lost to Larkin, also lost to Hendricks. Of course, he lost to Tyron Woodley. That's how he lost the title. Lost to RDA. It was surprising. Dominated by Colby. Had Askren on the on the ropes, and lost to him too. Where do you put him? Is he top 10 all the time, Robbie Lawler?
I'd give him top 10 all time. I think he's probably at the closer to top 5 without being top 5, maybe 6, 7.
Really?
If I really sat there and thought about it, but I think it's because of a lot of factors that I think a lot of the other welterweights don't have necessarily. Like Jake Shields, I think, is another person that belongs in the top 10 of all time welterweights, but he doesn't have like the great story around him. Like he doesn't have the Cinderella story. He doesn't have like this massive career comeback, which, by the way, was sparked because he found that he had lived his life with undiagnosed asthma. And that's why he couldn't train the proper way to make the welterweight limit. So he had to literally move his base from I think he was training at Arizona at the time. He had to move to a more humid climate. He settles upon South Florida, an American Top Team, and suddenly he's able to regain this cardio. He's able to just go out there and be a destroyer and eventually win the title and sort of fulfill this promise that he had years and years before when his first stint in the UFC, when he was famously called by Dana White as his birthday present for signing him to the promotion. Robbie Lawler is certainly one of those fighters that I think will always live on in fans' memories. And fortunately for him, a lot of those memories come at that Cinderella moment where he was the welterweight champion, and he had that all-time classic against Carlos Condit, which was right after that all-time classic against Rory McDonald, and he had all-time classic fights with Johnny Hendricks. Like this was a guy who every time he stepped in that cage, he entertained. And
Yeah.
it's good that he's getting out now, and I do like the fact that he's getting out on a fight that's really custom built to fall into the same mythology that is Ruthless Robbie Lawler. That just knock 'em, sock 'em, robots, just drag out brawl. And we probably will get that with Nico Price. May not turn out to be the happiest of endings. That's a distinct possibility, but he's going out on the shield, and I don't think someone like Robbie Lawler would have it any other way.
Yeah, I agree. I also look up our UFC predictions on Sportsnaut.com. I think Nico's going to win. It's the classic fighter on their last legs kind of moment. He lost to Brian Barberena. It's a similar kind of fight. Nico's maybe got even more power than Barberena. So I think, it's funny. It's a classic. Yeah, he's going to lose because he's older. If this was 5 years ago, Robbie Lawler, he just blast through him. But that's what it is, getting older as a fighter. But yeah, even like the Scott Smith fights, the Manhall fights I mentioned, like he's in just even smaller fights. The Nick Diaz first fight, just wild career. Definitely a legend. There's no doubt about it. No questions about him. Just amazing career. Moving on from that, from a very weird career. Also, again, like, subscribe. If you like what we're talking about, please share, comment, let us know what you think about this and these different things. Where does Robbie Lawler's place in the top 10 all time? Where's Alistair Overeem? But moving on to a top fighter now. Julianna Pena, she's really going to some weird places lately. She's very butthurt about Amanda Nunes living her own life and going into retirement, calling her a coward, saying she ran away from her by retiring, even though she was scheduled to face Julianna for a third time, and it was Julianna's injury that knocked her out of the fight. God forbid Nunes didn't want to wait for her and just wanted to fight this fight, because she maybe had the idea she was going to retire, probably had this idea for like 3-4 years already. But like, is Julianna Pena just straight up delusional? Has she just taken too many shots to the head in some of these fantastic wars she has been in? Is this like a misguided self-promotion, trying to be a Chael Sonnen maybe without the true charisma and the gift for gab? Shouldn't she just be focused like, man, I'm going to get a title shot. I know it next. I'm going to run through. I'm not facing Amanda Nunes the GOAT. I'm going to be champion again. Shouldn't they, like, talk to me, Anthony. What's wrong with this one?
Nothing is wrong with her that hasn't been wrong with her from jump. like Julianna Pena has been, for lack of a better word, a bozo for a long time. Like, she's said a lot of stupid things and done a lot of stupid things throughout the entirety of her career. Like, every time there's a microphone in her hand, God help us all. And this is what we have now. Like, she, can't take the fact that she was a champion away from her. All credit to her for pulling off one of the biggest upsets in mixed martial arts history. But I mean, still a bozo. Like, you can't really change that. That's like kind of in her DNA at this point. Like, the way she acted after Nunes retired in the cage, like,
Yes.
whatever rivalry you have, whatever feelings you have about this, set it aside, because that moment is bigger than you.
Yep.
There is absolutely no way in hell that the woman who knocked out Chris Cyborg, knocked out Ronda Rousey, beat the crap out of Miesha Tate, pretty much knocked out every great female fighter that is within her weight range.
Yeah. Which many people can't say. Even men can't say that. Her resume is mwah.
It's impeccable. There are very, very, very few people that can say that they've cleaned out generations of their divisions, like Amanda Nunes has. So this is a moment that's far bigger than her, with her family in the cage and everything, and you're booing and she's scared of you when you were supposed to fight her. When the last time you two met, she beat the ever-loving crap out of you for 25 minutes, just absolutely thrashed you to the point where a trilogy fight just seemed totally unnecessary. This is absolutely moronic, to say the least. Julianna Pena really needs a reality check. And I know there's a certain level of delusion that fighters have to have. At her level, they have to be, they've got to be crazy. You've got to be delusional. You've got to be selfish and self-centered, and all these things that we associate as negative traits are necessary to succeed in combat sports. Yeah. But man, there's a point where you need to check yourself into a mental hospital. Yeah, because this is just lunacy.
And it's just the nature of this, like, post Chael Sonnen world and what he was able to create for himself. by not being like the elite fighter, and you have these fighters that, and I get it, it works for people, but you're gonna have the goods and you're gonna have the bads,
Yeah,
and she's
and
very much the bad side of that deal.
definitely. I mean, Chael Sonnen deserves a ton of credit for what he was able to accomplish in his
Yeah,
career. Just as a competitor, he certainly was one of the elite middleweights of all time. We'll give him that. But his skills on the mic just opened the floodgates
yeah,
for a lot of people that just don't have that same level of charm. They just
yeah.
simply don't have it. I don't know if you've ever met Chael Sonnen. I've met Chael Sonnen and sat and talked with him for a while.
He's
And
so nice. He's so
he is
nice.
a charming person. And even when he's just blatantly lying or when he's just making up absolute foolishness, and he knows it's foolishness, but
Yeah,
he's having fun with it. It's fun.
yeah,
It's fun, and we can go against a lot of the more non PC things that he said over the years. But even then, it still was said in a spirit of jest. It still had a comedic undertone to it that
yeah,
you just were entertained by this man's presence. Julianna Pena has absolutely zero of that charisma. She has absolutely none of it, like not a shred of it. So to see her fumbling along with this absolute garbage is really sad. It's sad to watch.
yeah,
Like, just don't do that. Just focus on who you're gonna fight,
yeah.
because she has a very unlike before Amanda Nunes laid those gloves in the middle of the cage. She has a fantastic chance of becoming a two-time bantamweight champion. So focus on that. Nunes is retired, and rightfully so.
And it's just like, for example, Tatiana Suarez openly disappointed about Rose Namajunas changed division because she wanted to fight Rose Namajunas, this legendary fighter. I get that. You fought her, you beat her. Like you were one of the few people that beat her. So like the butt hurtness that you didn't get the third shot is strange stuff. But I mean, moving on for that, I'm going to close with some UFC 290 talk. I'm not going to go into depth with the whole card. It's a very good card, but there's 3 fights that are really the premier cream of the crop on this card. 2 of them are title fights. Want to go over them, run them down real quick. We'll start with the lower card on the main group of fights. Middleweight, probably a title eliminator, though. I really feel it's just a title eliminator for one guy, and that is Robert Whittaker versus Dricus du Plessis. Robert Whittaker is a huge favorite. The line may have changed, but he's a minus 400 going into this fight, which is big. I really don't feel, unless Robert Whittaker gets like a first round knockout, which he definitely do. I think this can do. This is a fantastic matchup for him. I think it opens a door for him to get a first round knockout. But if he doesn't, I just don't think he's going to get the shot. I just don't think Adesanya, with the leverage he has, is going to say, yeah, let me fight this guy I beat twice again, especially since the last fight was a little closer. Why even give him the chance? So I don't think he's going to do that. If DDP wins, he's probably going to get a shot. Just overall thoughts, who do you think is going to win this fight, and how do you see it playing out?
I got Robert Whittaker winning this, and it's very, very difficult for me to pick anyone aside from Robert Whittaker to win a middleweight fight, unless that person standing across from him is Israel Adesanya.
Yep.
Whittaker is just way too good in way too many areas. I mean, elite level wrestling, elite level counter wrestling, elite level striking offense, elite level striking defense. It's sort of like no real hole in this game that you can exploit. Yep. And DDP is not a guy who specializes in anything in particular. Like he isn't some submission whiz. He isn't like this knockout machine. He's very, very good, but in a very general sense. And I don't see one particular area where he's just better than Robert Whittaker. Like he's bigger, but Whittaker is used to being the undersized middleweight, and he's done very, very well regardless. And in fact, he's used that to his advantage considering the speed that he has over the rest of the division. So I think Whittaker wins this one pretty handily. The question, though, is like not even necessarily who is getting the title shot with a win over this. It's like, is anyone going to be healthy when this fight is over? Because I think this is going to be a battle. Like these guys are going to bang each other up. I've written about it on Ringside Intel a couple times. Like I don't see the winner of this one making it, another camp successfully in 2 months and being healthy enough to fight Adesanya. So we'll see what happens. I think this is going to lead to a Adesanya versus Jamal Hill fight or something.
Yeah, I think it's same thing. I feel it's going to be a quick win for Whittaker, first and second round. But I will throw out there that, not to take away from DDP's skill set, but it just isn't a good matchup for him. But just Whitaker's body, how he's had issues staying healthy. He's not your normal 32-year-old just because of the fights he's been in, how his body has been over the fight game has been tough on him. So I wouldn't be surprised if if we just get one of those weird moments where a decline begins here.
Like the door sort of closes on Whitaker being an elite fighter, and
because he's
just
been around
be when it happens. Yeah, it makes sense.
DDP is willing to throw bombs. He could take punches. He can finish people in different ways. Yeah, he's not fantastic and spectacular in one area, but he has a finishing ability. I can see something he catches him with some style. Maybe Whitaker doesn't respect him enough. I don't know. But yeah, just the way the sport has always been, there's just those weird moments where you have to start doubting the greats because they just normally start to decline because of age or whatever. So this could be one of those weird things. That said, let's move on to the main event, a co-main event of the night. Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja. Great fight. Moreno is the favorite with understandable reason. This is a fantastic and interesting storyline just because Moreno, this is one of the few guys that's not one of the few, but this is the only guy that's beaten him twice. And one of them obviously was an exhibition, it was on tough, but still, this is a guy who you can say has owned him. He has real estate in his head. Like, yes, Moreno is a better fighter. He's the favorite for a reason, but there's always just guys that have other guys' numbers. Rampage had Chuck Liddell's number, as great as Chuck Liddell was, and great. Nothing to take away from Rampage. Rampage is a great fight, but sometimes just styles just match up differently. The big question for me is they're both better too. Pantoja's a better fighter. I think Moreno's a bit better fighter, a bit of a better IQ fighter, and at the highest levels, skills are important. Athleticism is important, but you need to have the mind to adjust, the strategy, the planning, and I just feel that Pantoja, part of his success has been a little bit about being wild, being tough, being durable, getting in there and getting dirty. If he can draw Moreno into that fight, then anything can happen. I just don't think he will. I think Moreno gets like a 4th round submission. What are your thoughts on that one?
Man, I've been going back and forth on this one a lot. And as I'm talking right now, I still don't have a pick. Like, I'm trying to talk myself into a pick with this one because we've seen the evidence twice of what these two look like. And we've seen Moreno come up short twice, once by a submission and once by decision. So it should be pretty clear cut. But since their last meeting, like, Moreno has been through the meat grinder as far as experience is concerned. And when you talk about mastering like the sort of chaos that Pantoja can put on you, Deiveson Figueiredo is like the 2.0 version of Pantoja as far as like putting on that chaos and consequences behind everything that he does. Moreno came out of that. Granted, he took his lumps and, has a defeat on there too, but he came out successful. Like, he has the belt now for a reason. I think he built on that success. It's very rare that I will go against a guy who has defeated someone twice.
Yeah.
But this is one of those times where I feel like I have to, because Moreno has shown this substantial growth and sort of this ability to calm the storm against someone like Figueiredo, and not in that last fight, especially not get sucked into the fight that he wanted, and sort of set the tempo himself. And I think if he comes in with that same mentality that he's going to set the tempo that he wants to set, then Pantoja is going to have to come up with answers that he may not have. Yeah. And I think Moreno wins this one.
Now to the main event. Alexander Volkanovski comes back down to featherweight. He's going to fight Yair Rodriguez in a unification fight. Yair Rodriguez is the interim champion after beating Josh Emmett. Honestly, Volkanovski is a big favorite too. Minus 380 and going into the middle of the week. Understandably so. I just think this fight is a lot like the Whitaker fight in that nothing taken away from Yair Rodriguez. He's a fantastic fighter, an outstanding striker, but I think, again, this is a good matchup for Volkanovski because he's a fantastic striker himself, double tough. He just doesn't get, I don't think, enough credit as one of the most complete fighters in the sport. Like, he can do everything, and he can wrestle. He did a solid amount of wrestling early in his UFC career. He doesn't do it as much because he doesn't need it as much, but if you want to know how good a wrestler, go look at the Makhachev fight. He lost that fight. Makhachev proved he can strike. He's all around too. But he made Makhachev have to stand up because his takedown defense was so good. And he can take down guys too. And Yair Rodriguez has shown a weakness in his grappling. Anthony, I think Volkanovski is going to get a finish in this fight myself. But what do you think? Do you feel there's any case that Yair has done enough to prove that he can keep it on the feet? or maybe he can finish Volkanovski. He could dominate, or is this kind of maybe the best chance for him to win? Is just another like Whitaker. Volkanovski's been the top. Maybe he underestimates him. He's talking about wanting a Makhachev rematch, and maybe he overlooks Yair and costs himself a fight.
I think it's very difficult to just rule out someone like Yair Rodriguez simply because his striking arsenal is so dangerous.
Yeah.
The man can kick you from so many different angles that the average person can't see coming. And quite frankly, you're going to have a hard time training for someone like him. And I think especially in the Josh Emmett fight, he showed a lot of interesting wrinkles to his game, which make him very dangerous for everyone in that division, where he didn't do like he did against Frankie Edgar, where he just simply succumbed to like this wrestling pressure and he just had no answer for it. Or he succumbed to the pressure of Max Holloway before he started sort of finding his rhythm in the later portions of that fight. Like, he was able to still retain himself while having success against Josh Emmett. And that is particularly dangerous because this is not a guy who's transforming what he does to fit the conventional mixed martial arts arsenal. This is a guy who's saying, I come with this particular skill set. How do I use that? How can I still throw my kicks? How can I still commit to these particular strikes without worrying about X, Y, and Z? I think that works against everybody but Alexander Volkanovski in this division at this point. Because he's just like Volkanovski's just that good. Like, if we're talking about someone who's lesser as far as their level of greatness, then we have a stronger case for Yair coming out the victor here and swaying the betting lines. But I mean, we've seen Volkanovski out wrestle people. We've seen him outstrike people. We've seen him do what he's not supposed to do against people. Yair, I don't think it has anything to offer him aside from one of those wild kicks landing early on and and putting them a little bit on the roller skates, and then he follows up with something. Yeah, this is probably going to look like an ugly fight for Volkanovski.
All right. That is our picks. Again, if you like the conversation, like, share, please subscribe to the channel, sportsnaut.com, and check out some of our work there. Check out Anthony's work on Ringside Intel, of course. And let us know who are your picks for some of these fights. And also, what are your thoughts on Overeem and Lawler? That is it for this week's edition of Sportsnaut Scrap Report. I am Jason Burgos. He is Anthony Walker. Bye-bye.